Hi everyone. This is a recording of Oracle Cloud APM new features and updates as of April 2025. My name is Yutaka Takatsu, one of the product managers in OCI Observability and Management product management team. Here is today's agenda. I will talk about the recent enhancements we have made to Oracle Cloud APM in the areas listed on the screen. Please note that not every enhancement is covered in this video, and they may be presented in other media, such as other recordings, live labs workshops, or documentations. The first feature I would like to talk about is the background queries. With this feature, you can create queries, run them in the background, and retrieve the results later. You can either run a single execution or schedule the query to run repeatedly at your desired intervals. For example, when retrieving a large dataset, you may encounter 1-minute timeout with a runtime query. Using background queries, the query runs behind the scenes until it completes and retrieves up to 1 million rows. Also, the result will be saved with unlimited time instead of 13 months retention time of the raw trace data. Another benefit of background queries is that it plays a vital role in data preparation. They not only run queries in the background, but also collect, process, and transform raw monitoring data into structured results. This makes it easier running a deeper analysis or to create a dashboard as you can run queries based on the result set. Background queries are especially useful when working with large volume of data that require complex data transformations before analysis, visualization, and alerting. Let's see this in actual product. In Trace Explorer, if I want to run a query that takes a long time to execute, now I have options either to cancel the execution or to run the query in the background. So in this case, I would select a single run, name the query, let's set the maximum number of rows to 10,000, and submit. And this will automatically cancel the runtime query and brings the query to run in the background. While waiting, I can do something else or view the query that is submitted. The query is still being executed, but I have another query that runs the same data. So let's take a look at that. The result shows immediately as it is stored for the repeated use. Let's review another example. Here is the session data for the last 60 minutes. I would like to see the data for the last 7 days and schedule to run weekly. Let's say every Sunday. To do this, I can use background query, and I will use the repeated run option for this use case. This option runs the query repeatedly, overwriting the data each time. It is perfect if you want a snapshot of business activity for a specific time range. There is also an aggregated query, which accumulates the data over time rather than replacing it. Here, name the query and specify the date and time that the query runs the first time. I will set the time on the next Sunday, 12 a.m. Set the maximum row to 10,000 and set the repeat interval to run every 7 days for 7 days of data. Here is what will be added to the query, and submit. Now the background query is scheduled to run in the configured time. The execution status is pending because this is scheduled ahead and has not run yet. However, I have another query that I already run with the same configuration, which I can look at. Here is a query result for the 7 days period executed on last Sunday. I can change the query to see different information. So let's say I want to see the total number of page views, which shows the value of 168,000 in this case. I can further create a widget based on these queries and create a custom dashboard. The next feature I would like to mention is the export to CSV. When you run a query, the results may have more than 100 rows, which is not displayed in the Trace Explorer user interface. This feature allows you to select the max number of rows to export, up to 1 million. You can rerun the query in the background and download the results, which you can save it in the CSV file. It provides easier and flexible paths to the data analysis, also useful in case you want to share the information with non-APM users or export the data to use in different software systems. Let's see this in actual product. To do this, click the download icon at the right end of the table. You can either select to export the current table data or select the rerun query and enter max number of rows that you want to export the trace data. And please note that only the single value columns are supported for export. In the trace data table, you may have columns that include multiple values, such as use of span summary function or time series statement. However, those will be ignored and excluded from the dataset. Another nice feature introduced in Trace Explorer is a copy recent queries. While analyzing trace data, you may construct complex queries that you want to reuse at a later time. You can access the feature from a menu item opens by clicking the three-dot icon under the Run button. Trace Explorer already has features to save queries within the domain. But with the Copy Recent Query feature, you can simply copy the list of query history to the clipboard so that you can save it to a file locally in your computer or share it with other users. The next feature is TQL Attribute Assistance. This feature simplifies query building by displaying a list of relevant attributes based on the cursor's position within the query. While the Trace Query Language, or TQL, offers powerful and flexible capabilities for trace data analysis, identifying the correct attributes to use can be challenging. This feature helps by automatically showing a context-aware list of applicable attributes as you type. So for example, if I type show traces with a space, it shows a pull-down menu showing a list of attributes that can be used to query trace data. If I type span after the space, it narrows down the selection to show the attributes including the word span. However, if I type show spans space span, it shows a list but with much fewer number of attributes. This is because it is showing the values only applicable to query spans data, such as span duration, which will not show up for traces. And this can be also used in the background query results. When I place a cursor after a table name and enter space, it opens a list of attributes which are showing in green color that are available in the table. And when the saved query result is used in the TQL, it also shows additional tab in the attribute pane. Here is a tab named Users, which is specific for this saved query result, showing the list of attributes. Note that you will have to run the saved query first to show the column in the attribute pane. So what I have here in the slide is the attribute pane improvement, which we just saw in a demo. When you run a query from the result set of the background query, the attribute panel shows query result attributes. The next enhancement is span enrichment rules validation. And just want to recap what is span enrichment. This is a powerful and flexible feature that allows you to enhance spans with custom or predefined attributes. For example, you can remove the attributes that include personal data from spans under specific conditions, or combine multiple attribute values and create a new attribute, or extract a portion from the long string attribute so that you can run analysis more meaningfully. On the other hand, because it is highly extensible, enrichment rules can be very complex. If misconfigured, these rules can unintentionally alter your data. The newly introduced rules validation feature allows you to validate the rules before saving them. With this feature, you can ensure that span enrichment rules are correctly configured and applied to your span data before they go live. This helps you to identify and correct misconfigurations, preventing unintended data modifications, and ensuring accurate span enrichment. In case you have more than one rule in the same span enrichment group, you can validate a single rule or a specific set of rules or all the rules together within the same group. The test can be performed on all action types: generic, string, numeric, and pass-through. Next, let's take a look at how to use this feature in actual product. In this example, I will create a span enrichment rule which extracts the table name from the database spans and validate the rule before saving it. I know the table name is included in a SQL statement attribute, so I will use a regular expression to extract a string. I have a screen open from my APM domain, which I can configure span enrichment rule actions. Here, enter the rule name. Select span attribute as an action target. Action type is string, and available action is extract. Next, select the attribute that I want to apply the pattern against. In this example, the attribute is DB statement. This is where I would like to extract the table name from. Then specify a regular expression pattern. Output attribute name is a new attribute which you will see the extracted value. I will name it as table name. As you can see, the regular expression pattern I created is very complex. I believe this works, but to ensure, I would like to validate before saving it. Now I can test this pattern during the span rule creation. And this opens a screen which I can test the rule against a generic span sample. In this example, the regular expression pattern which I created correctly extracted the table name from the attribute value. So that was a test running on the sample data. If you like to, you can also run the test against the real span data. And you can do this by using the copy span data feature in the trace explorer and manually paste it into the span sample field and run a test against. As a result, the table name from the actual span data was successfully extracted. Now I can save the rule and run against the span data. In this demo, I only used one rule, but you can also run tests against multiple rules within a single group. Bind variables in Oracle database allow you to reuse the same SQL statement with different values at runtime. When analyzing a JDBC span in APM, you may notice that bind variables appear as question marks in the DB statement attribute. Because you cannot see the actual values used in the query, in some cases, it makes it challenging to troubleshoot issues or analyze data. In the recent release of APM Agent, you can address this by enabling JDBC bind values capture parameter. This feature allows you to capture the values assigned to bind variables. To enable the parameter, go to the agent installation directory, open probe config configuration file, then set capture bind values parameter to true. If the captured values contain sensitive information, such as social security numbers, You can configure the agent to exclude the specific columns from bind value capture for data security and compliance. Please note for the supported data types, the feature supports only simple string and numeric variable types. It does not support complex data types such as blob or clob or object types. The next feature is payload capture for servlets and HTTP clients. With recent releases of APM Agent, you can now enable APM to capture request and response payloads. You can see the details of the application request that is not available in the URL and analyze captured payload data in APM and gain deeper insights into your application. The feature supports servlets, JAX-RS, OSP proxy services, and various HTTP clients. To enable payload capturing, open the probe config ACLM file in the agent installation directory and set the request and response payload capture parameters to true. You can see the captured payload information in the span details view. The captured data is limited to 1000 characters, but you can extract specific portions of the payload using XPath, JSON path, or regular expressions. The example in the screen shows when the capture payload settings are enabled in the configuration file. It also created a custom dimension name, which is used to display the value in the span details view. In another example, an expression is used to retrieve a specific value from the payload. This is the end of the recording of Oracle Cloud APM New Features and Updates, April 2025. Thank you for watching.